Welcome to the first episode of Asymmetric Power with me, Dr. V, Vanessa Neumann. In this podcast, we will explore shifting power dynamics in the theoretical framework that forms the basis of strategy for national power in the great global competition. I hope it will also shape your thinking to compete effectively for whatever you want and give context to what you read and hear in the news. And of course, entertain you. So let's get started. Asymmetric power is how a smaller entity, could be a business or a country or military force, defeats a larger one by turning their apparent weaknesses into strengths. For instance, if you're smaller, you could be more nimble to change course. If you're widely ignored, you have the element of surprise on your side. If you have the support of the people, you can do anything. The crux of the matter is that you want to attack the center of gravity of your opponent. Destabilize him by taking away the capabilities that enable him to do what he needs to do to succeed or survive. For every critical capability, the ability to raise or move money, or rapidly grow market share, or run a door-to-door community operation to win votes, there is a critical vulnerability. It is that vulnerability you go target in an effective, multi-pronged attack. You map it out. First, you put your COG, your center of gravity, of your opponent or competitor at the center of your whiteboard. Draw lines radiating out from that central circle to specify each capability that your opponent needs to do what they do to survive and succeed. Then from there, for each capability, you identify ways to attack that capability. These are the critical vulnerabilities. These are your targets. Now, this map can get very multidimensional very fast, which is why complex competitive scenarios get programmed into a computer that can manage the complexity and iterations of a competitive simulation or war game. But today, I want to open the discussion on the very popular topic of the use of information as a weapon. First, let's contextualize the discussion by summarizing the basic framework into which this weapon of information fits. There are generally considered to be 7 instruments of national power, referred to by the acronym DIMEFIL. What is an instrument of national power, you may ask? Well, it is any tool that is easily used by a federal government to advance its interests on the geopolitical chessboard. So, taking DIMEFIL, D, diplomatic, ambassadors, votes in multilateral organizations like the UN Security Council or the Organization of American States. Informational, news and social media, narratives that can be shaped and controlled and disseminated. This is what we will focus on. Military supremacy and war capability, having the greatest airplanes, drones, and other forms of military tech. Economic, trade tariffs, which are in the news lately, are a powerful form of warfare. Financial, which are sanctions. Intelligence, which is espionage. And last but not least, law enforcement, laws and arrest warrants. Whether it's, say, for example, the FBI's Most Wanted or Interpol Red Notices, you get the idea. More recently, theorists have added a D for development. In that case, examples would be USAID, the World Bank, and other MDBs, multilateral development banks, as well as sovereign funds focused on development. If you include development as an instrument of national power, the acronym changes from DIMEFIL to MIDFIELD. Whichever framework you choose, DIMEFIL or MIDFIELD, Information is a major component of asymmetric power and warfare. That's why we refer to information or influence operations, information warfare, and disinformation. I'm sure you've heard of most of these terms swirling around in news stories. So let's clarify. Misinformation is information dissemination based on an error. You don't have your facts right, and you're spreading the error. Disinformation, on the other hand, is an intentionally designed campaign meant to spread beliefs based on falsehoods that you know to be falsehoods, to get a constituency to believe something to achieve your own ends, like get insurrectionists to overthrow the government because they think the vote was stolen, when you, disseminating the information, know it wasn't, for example. Because of its power to move or destabilize the political base on which many of these other instruments of DIMEFIL or MIDFIELD are predicated, we've got to be in power to exercise them. Information operations, known as I/O, are the darkest of the arts. It is at the heart of asymmetric warfare, the war of all the people, where civilians are the mass component in a war where an actual bullet may never be fired, but governments are toppled. Hence, the reason we, citizens and policymakers, are so concerned with the capabilities of big tech, their access to our personal information, the sale of that personal information, and the power of their algorithms to make us go down rabbit holes that inflame our emotions and make us take action on things that are not true. That's disinformation. A famous example is the murder of a pizza maker because of the false belief that he's running a pedophilic sex trafficking ring for politicians. A falsehood that was spread through social media and had very deadly consequences in real life. Anger, unfortunately, is the most profitable emotion for social media platforms because anger keeps us engaged, scrolling, reading posts, and responding longer than any other emotion, even more than cute cat videos. And the profits of the platforms are directly tied to keeping us hooked for extended periods, as that forms the basis of their advertising revenues. However, we need not deem platforms inherently good or bad. They just do what we ask of them. What we do need to do is to be aware of the power to manipulate our emotions over reason. Reason and empathy are what enable us to have conversations in the public realm, which shapes our laws and interactions. It is a key feature of our humanity, of what makes us human. Political philosophers like I call this conversibility in a society. So to the extent that disinformation degrades our capacity for that conversibility, where we see each other's point of view and find a common ground for rules and laws that bind us and advance us as a society, disinformation degrades us as humans. That said, information or influence operations are not inherently bad either. They are a common tool for everyone, from governments to corporations to NGOs and individual activists. They are key to moving the policy needle to redress injustices and skewed narratives. Look at the importance of media in our coming to understand racial and class injustices, or the subjugation of women through the objectification of their sexuality, which was reconsidered with the recent Me Too movement, or even just the need for seatbelts and child safety and driving under the influence. You might be old enough to remember the campaigns of MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and SAD, Students Against Drunk Driving. Those were information campaigns that changed our thinking, and then legislation, which then reinforced our thinking on responsible behavior. For a successful information campaign, you need a plethora of credible voices for your cause. You may have heard of these as influencers, but they take other forms. They can be individuals, parties, NGOs, even other rival companies that don't share 100% of your interests, but are aligned with and support your particular goal because it serves their interests as well. That's how coalitions are formed. An example would be if your goal is to seek a form of regulation or deregulation, such as MAD and SAD did. As these multiple voices rise in synchronicity, you create an echo chamber. And with today's algorithms, these become self-reinforcing and raise each other's visibility, and therefore influence, even without or before the use of bots and trolls. Next week, I'd like to get us started on some concrete discussions of news stories where we can see these concepts applied IRL in real life. In doing so, we can understand how we are being targeted. We can also apply these concepts for our own competitive environments, including our work. And hopefully, I can keep you engaged on this algorithmic platform with solid information that helps and strengthens you, not rage that weakens you. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you next week here on Asymmetric Power with Dr. V. Hasta la próxima.